We all have people in our lives who give us guidance. Some act like a coach, like you said, and give very specific, they take control of the method to help us achieve a specific goal. And others are like mentors who give general guidance and support to help us achieve longer term goals. Today, come along on a small journey as I tell you about someone who's been a mentor in my life. I grew up on a dairy farm. On the dairy farm, there's no such thing as fun employed. Dairy farmers don't work overtime, they work all the time. That's the environment in which I grew up. When I was 8 years old, it was after breakfast, and I noticed that Mom had gotten one of those huge packages of those delicious sandwich cookies. 2 of the rows were vanilla and the middle row was chocolate, and I desperately needed some of those cookies. I brought my younger brother Joe in and said, let's sneak out some cookies. So between the two of us, we found a way to sneak that entire package out into the backyard behind the shed, and we had some yummy cookies. Boy, were they good. It was time for me to get out to the yard to do my chores. I delegated getting the cookies back into the house to my brother Joe. At lunchtime, I come in, and Dad says, I found this package of cookies on the step. The dog was in them. Who had these cookies? Now, if you know my dad, you know you don't lie to my dad, and you know you're going to face a near-death experience, but you better face it or death is for sure. Joe and I fessed up, and I thought, oh boy, here comes the licking of my life. But it didn't. An interesting thing occurred. Dad said, you know, you got to learn to not waste food like that, not be careless. Here's how this is going to happen. You're going to eat these cookies for every meal until they're gone. We get to have cookies for every meal until they're gone. I probably have 5 or 6 cookies, a nice mix, probably 4 vanilla and 2 chocolate for lunch. And I switched the mix for supper, and I had 3 chocolate and 2 vanilla and for breakfast. You know what happened? It was everything I could do to put any more of these into my mouth. I brought Joe aside and said, we're not going to survive this. We got to find another way. My job in the morning for chores was to feed silage to the cows out in the yard, out in the cow yard. Here's the idea. We're going to somehow fit the rest of these cookies into our pockets, and we're going to bury them in the silage out there. We agreed on that plan. I had my thing full of cookies, and I snuck out to the yard so Dad couldn't see them bulging out of my pockets. And as I was behind the silo putting on the silage in, I would crumble them up into the silage. There's no way anybody's going to find these cookies. And I put them out there. And then I see Joe come out. Sure enough, I think he's sneaking his cookies into the silage. We got to lunchtime, and we were starving, and we were wolfing down that wonderful hot dish that Mom had made. And Dad's eating as well, and he says, I found a cookie out in the bunk where the cows eat silage. A whole cookie. I looked at Joe. He didn't know enough to crumble up the cookies. He threw them whole into the silage, and Dad had found them. Here it comes, the blow of death. I won't survive this spanking. I won't make it to high school. But I looked up, and there was Dad, and he was eating, and he had a strange look in his eye. I hadn't seen that look before. Years later, I'm now a father. And I thought back on this situation, and what was happening is Dad was desperately trying not to laugh and choke on his food at the same time. What had Dad done for me? He knew that there'd be a whole lot of times in life when I would make a stupid choice. And one way or another, I am going to face the consequences. He provided that general guidance and support to help me face those consequences in a way that he could help. Makes me wonder how many times he stole the cookies. The second situation occurred when I was 15 years old. In the summer, when it was time to make hay, my job was to drive the tractor and pull the wagon out to the field, bring the full wagon of hay back into the yard, pull up to the blower, and unload the hay. This actually took a bit of driving skill because there was only a little bit of clearance around this machinery. And it was kind of important that I not run in a ditch or run into a building or some of the machinery. At the end of the day, it was time to back the wagons into the shed, and there's like 4 inches of clearance on either side of these wagons, and Dad always did that. Pulled it in, and somehow he expertly did that. I wondered how he did that. One day I pull in, and I'm ready to jump off the tractor, and says, "You're going to back in the wagon." In a brash moment, I said, "No, I'm not." Dad calmly said, "Yes, you are. I will smash the building." "I suggest you don't." And he walked away. I can't describe the intense fear that I experienced in that moment. I had no idea how to do this. I did what I always do in stressful moments. I sat and I prayed for a while, and I sweated a lot. And then I thought, well, how does Dad do it? Well, he pulls this way, and then he turns a wheel, and he backs. So I tried that. And I did it wrong, and I did it backwards. So I drove around the yard so I could position correctly and tried it again. I drove around the yard 10 times for that first wagon. But don't you know, in the end, I backed that wagon into the shed. Well, there's another wagon, so it only took me 8 times around the yard to get that one. It took me so long to back in those wagons, my brothers had to do my chores. I drove the tractor up into the shed and got off, and I had this very strange mix of frustration and accomplishment. Here comes Dad walking up, and he says, "I knew you could." And then he walked away. He used his mentoring skills to give me general guidance, and you would agree, powerful character building to help me succeed. There's going to be a lot of times in life when we face those hard problems, those situations. We don't know how to do it. Call on our character, call on our skills, and just go after it. How about you? Who has helped you when you stole the cookies? Who's helped you when you had to back in the wagon? Most importantly, who's in your life right now that needs you to mentor them? Mr. Toastmaster.